Good morning. Today's class is going to be in surveillance detection for a facility. Detecting surveillance from a fixed location. This class will cover the steps that need to be taken to set up a surveillance detection plan and implement one for your facility. Surveillance is the visible hand of the threat, and detecting this early can save lives and protect property. Detecting surveillance from a fixed position will rely on your knowledge of not only your facility, but the areas surrounding your facility. So let's get started. Static surveillance detection. Detecting a terrorist or threat surveillance from a static location is not difficult with the proper training, security measures, and processes put into place. Identifying the threat during the surveillance phase of their planning cycle exploits the greatest vulnerability of these threat actors and allows you to proactively identify the threat before an operation can take place against your facility and its people. So what we know, things we're going to know. So a majority of criminal and terrorist actions are successful because of pre-operational surveillance conducted that allowed them to plan for any issues that they might arise. There will always be some type of surveillance or information gathering campaign prior to a terrorist or criminal event. Terrorists, when they determine which target they want to attack, could have many potential targets in one area. To cover them all, they will use as many people as possible. Most of these people will be untrained. During the initial phase of surveillance, they are trying to determine who is the hard target and should be avoided, and who are the soft targets and should be looked at closer for their potential vulnerabilities. They use people with little or no training because of the number of people needed to cover all of the potential targets in that area. This makes it easier for surveillance to be detected, which is why we should have a surveillance detection program in place 24/7. When setting up your program, do not forget that they will use technology also, including CCTVs, trail cams, drones, the internet. You should consider this when setting up your program, such as putting in drone detection equipment or having a social media monitoring program that can help. So, things that we know. Terrorists and criminals conduct surveillance and reconnaissance operations to ensure success. They will initially use people who have little or no training in surveillance activities, making them easier to detect. Surveillance is the gathering of information. It can be gathered by people on the ground, the internet, and use of technology such as drones. All will be used by threat actors to gather the information they need. They want to avoid detection. This is the greatest fear of a person conducting surveillance activities. It could alerts those being observed that they are a target. They have to be located in a place and at a time that allows them to obtain the information they need, while lowering their chances of being detected. Surveillance can be conducted by terrorists, criminals, governments, business rivals, law enforcement, stalkers, and etc. So rings of security around a fixed site. You need to develop rings of control and place them around your facility. These are not real rings, but identified areas of control you have. By identifying these areas of control, you will give your security the ability to know which areas they need to concentrate on when it comes to information proofing and controlling these areas through security processes and procedures, along with physical security measures such as barriers and other control devices. The inner ring will be the actual walls of the facility or the buildings. Some static locations have multiple buildings in the inner ring and include the actual offices, stadiums, parking garages, and other structures that are needed for day-to-day operations. So, your inner ring. You should create an inner ring of security around itself or your facility. These rings are created to take advantage of the landscape, surrounding area, and the physical security measures already in place. The innermost ring will be the physical security measures. These are visible and act as a deterrent to any threat actor, but they are visible, so ways can be devised to get past them in order to gain the information the threat will need. Some of these measures, physical security measures, will include walls, including the actual walls of the facility, fences, gates, intrusion detection systems, guards, including K9 teams and K9 explosive detection teams, vegetation, vehicle barriers, to include fencing, bollards, wedges, vehicle gates, etc., and security screening activities for both persons and vehicles. So, the middle ring of security. The middle ring is the access control areas. These are the areas where an entry badge is required and identity is confirmed, where people or vehicles have to pass through gates with security screening activities located at them. These areas usually have guards performing these screening activities. CCTV cameras are usually in place to watch these actions taking place and to provide coverage of entry control processes and areas. The middle ring is usually visible from areas not controlled by your facility. The center or middle ring is usually the procedural ring. This is the area that has access control, physical security screening processes, guards, and other measures that will control who is granted access past this point. This ring can include entry badges, including for visitors, identification checks, including delivery drivers, access controls such as card readers for pedestrians or vehicle gates, security screening of persons, vehicles, and bags, alarm systems, CCTV cameras, including facial recognition, intelligent video analytics, and license plate readers, and guards. So the outer ring. So the facility with no control over this environment has no ability to stop and ask questions. Usually the outer ring is the area where you have no authority. So you'll need to have to take other measures of protection here. This is when suspicious activity reports need to be made at local law enforcement levels and to local law enforcement who do have some control of this environment and can perform checks on suspicious activity, especially when they fit into patterns of behavior that indicate pre-attack surveillance is taking place or some other type of criminal activity. It's hard for some facilities and security personnel to comprehend that they have no control over activities taking place in the outer ring, but it is a fact of life. And while you have no authority in this area, you can still observe and report suspicious activity to authorities, and you have the ability to record and report any suspicious activity you see to your chain of command and in the security organization. While you have no authority or control, this does not mean you cannot make your presence felt in this area by having vehicles patrol and drive through to just look around. You have every right to move through and be in this area just like everyone else has. So the outer ring is going to be defined as the area where you have minimal or no control of the working or operating environment. Anyone can be there for any amount of time, for any reason. This is the area where the threat can begin gathering information about your facility without your knowledge. This is also the area where the facility needs to identify those areas where hostile points of observation are that can be used by those conducting surveillance to gather information on specific aspects of these facility security processes in the inner and middle ring and other information needed to successfully carry out an attack or other operation against the facility. So points of observation are those locations that hostile or threat actors can conduct surveillance activities against your facilities. These points depend on the environment your facility is located in. High density urban, low density urban, rural, countryside, industrial park, business park, entertainment venues in a city, sports venues, sports parks, etc. And they can be endless depending on the surrounding structures and supporting structures in the area, such as parking lots, parking garages, overflow parking, restaurants, transportation to and into and out of the areas, buses, trains, trams, subways, and ride shares. You need to identify and create a written document with photographs of all these points of observation you can identify. This book needs to be updated quarterly or when necessary, such as if construction of new buildings or facilities or roadworks are taking place in these areas that can provide new points of observation. So basically, these are locations where surveillance can be performed, allowing threat actors to get the information needed for for planning and performing a threat act against the facility. This facility will need to identify these locations for both persons and vehicles and set up a process to monitor them discreetly for threat surveillance activities. This can be accomplished by performing a facility vulnerability analysis directed towards surveillance activities. You need to look at the facility from the perspective of the potential threat outside looking in instead of what normally takes place in a security organization by designing processes and security planning from the inside looking out. So just some potential points of observation include sidewalk, cafes, roadwork construction sites, taxi stands, ride-sharing pickup points, bus and train stops, parking lots, garages, restaurants, food trucks, retail stores, highway overpasses that overlook the facility, utility road, residences, including apartment buildings, churches, etc. The list is endless and is limited only by the imagination of the threat and the environment the facility is located in. So, predictable activities are activities that everybody knows is going to take place. So you need to create a list of predictable activities not only for your facility and building, but other buildings and facilities that are located near or next to you in that surrounding area. You should also create a list of unpredictable activities that a threat can use or take advantage of when creating an attack plan. So some predictable activities include scheduled deliveries, bus and tram stops, scheduled maintenance calls, scheduled visitors and events, business openings and closings, restocking vending machines, mail delivery, guard changes, planned parades, fire drills. So once again, the list can be endless. You just have to know what's going on in your area. So unpredictable activities include service calls, UPS or DHS package deliveries, medical emergencies, utility outages, weather-related issues such as plowing snow, vehicle accidents and breakdowns, unplanned demonstrations, police responding to an area or the fire department, fire alarms, food deliveries, etc. What others can you think of in an area you're familiar with that can be considered predictable or unpredictable activities? So your area analysis. This must be performed and a written document created. This should be updated as necessary based on activities in the area and re-looked at least quarterly to ensure that new areas of concern are addressed. These surveillance positions need to be looked at for 24/7 occupancy, weather considerations, and other site-specific issues that will affect the threat's ability to observe. So an area analysis is basically a tool used by a facility to help them identify the areas and specific locations that hostile surveillance can use to perform observations of the facility's identified vulnerabilities, their avenues of approach, and all area activities that take place that will help them in developing their plan and conducting their attack on the facility. What is the threat looking for? When it's in its hostile surveillance positions, they need a view of the facility targeted, includes using CCTV and other tech when feasible, the ability to go unnoticed during their surveillance activities, getting into and out of these locations safely and unnoticed, and areas where technical surveillance can be used unnoticed, such as drones, cameras, videos, so they can gather the information they need. Right? The threat surveillance has to be able to see the facility vulnerabilities it intends to exploit for its attack. That's one of the main things you're looking for. It has to be able to see these vulnerabilities. So detecting surveillance. The purpose of having a surveillance detection program at a facility is to determine whether or not surveillance is being conducted against that facility. Surveillance can take place for weeks, months, or years with the threat gathering the information they believe necessary to conduct a successful attack. So a surveillance detection program and process should be a permanent part of the facility security program and processes. So where will you be looking? You will be focused on the potential hostile surveillance locations identified in your area analysis, along with possible mobile surveillance activities taking place closer to your facility. Remember, Surveillance detection has to take place 24/7, 365 days a year to be an effective surveillance detection program. So, indicators of fixed surveillance. Indicators are the actions people take, such as correlated activities, the characteristics of the people, their locations, and their demeanor. Indicators can also be the absence of normal actions expected to be taken during a certain event, time, or activity. The absence of a normal action to an event should raise suspicions. This could be they're not acting normal because they don't want to draw attention to themselves, or they don't know how to act normal in that situation. So, some of the indicators. So, spending extensive time in one location, staying in a location with a good view of the target facility, camping, broke down, sitting in a bus or a train stop and never boarding, using windows or mirrors of a vehicle to look or photograph the target facility, continually taking photographs with the target facility in them, walking a dog back and forth in the same area, stopping frequently, taking pictures, people standing at intersections and never crossing the street, people reading or watching their cell phones at cafes, diners, restaurants, and never ordering, or always looking at the target facility. So those are just some of the indicators. So unusual mannerisms. They're nervous, not blending in, doing the same actions over and over again, avoiding eye contact. Sometimes they will try to place themselves behind objects if they think you're being observed. Remember, that's the threat, a surveillance greatest fear. Sitting at the back of an outdoor cafe in the shadows, back to wall, or people sitting by a window, always looking at the target facility. Photographing or filming in such a way as to avoid notice, such as holding the camera at waist level or leaving it on the table. Those are unusual. People take photographs. They usually don't care if people see them taking photographs. So acts outside of normal expectations to the environment. So this could include things like parked vehicle continually occupied. Sometimes several vehicles with people interacting. Usually when people park, they get out. If you park and stay in there and nobody comes to get in so you can drive away, that's unusual. Anything out of place with that environment, or even vehicles altered to obstruct the license plates, or the windows are darkened or covered, even at night, which would be unusual. In all cases, the surveillance will try to blend into the environment they are working in. They need to legitimize their presence by doing things that seem logical for that area and time. They want to avoid detection. So these are just a few indicators of the possible surveillance activity. Indicators are endless and depend on the threat, the environment they are operating in, and the personnel they are using, cover they are using for being there, how they are conducting their surveillance, the technology they're using, etc. Keep an open mind when looking and observing for surveillance activities. Anything suspicious to you or something that draws your attention should be written down, and more observation should be done to determine why those actions are taking place and if they are a threat to you or your facility. Indicators will change depending on the environment the facility is located in. Buildings in high-density urban environments will have different issues to deal with because of the high volumes of pedestrian and vehicle traffic. Those facilities located in industrial parks and rural areas will have different indicators for their operating environment. Facilities such as entertainment venues and sports venues will have different indicators because their environments are different. Each security team for these different environments needs to come up with a list of indicators that will cover the activities around the facility and will help in identifying threat surveillance as it takes place. Another area that needs to be part of the observation process is the ability to detect correlating activities of the threat surveillance. Correlating activities are important and can help identify surveillance personnel. So what is a correlating activity? These are actions that occur when other activities are taking place at the facility, such as predictable activities. A truck approaches a loading dock. People seeing this stop their action for cover, such as reading a book or cooking at a food truck, and start filming or taking notes. When the truck is admitted, they stop and go back to their cover actions. It's just one example of what a correlating activity could be. It could be anytime they stop their cover for their reason for being there, and focus entirely on the facility or the activity surrounding the facility in order to gain information. So your main focus will be for correlating activities of surveillance personnel that is directly related to activities of the facility, especially those security activities you identified in your vulnerability and area assessment. This type of activity can be any process from the threat surveillance that is a direct result of an activity at the facility, such as the people in these hostile observation points will stop what they're doing, their reason for being there, and start note taking, photographing, or videoing when security functions are performed. Now, some of the security processes they will want to look at: screening of individuals, visitors, employees, VIPs, LEO, fire department, medical response. Is it the same for each person, or is it different for everyone? Such as VIPs get a lighter screening, or they might not be screened at all. Same with fire department. Screening of bags and handheld objects before they enter the facility. Screening of persons with disabilities. How well did they screen somebody in a wheelchair? Screening of vehicles. How will they do that? Are there any patrols, vehicles, and foot of the facility? Do they ever perform inspections of their security barriers and their equipment? What is the gender, race, and ethnicity of the security forces and how they dress? Do they carry weapons? Presence of or absence of CCTVs or security lighting or other security devices? Everyday activities that involve security process are another area that we'll be observing. Loading dock operations, truck arrivals, inspections, how long the line is, how quick in and out, process for trucks leaving, mail and package deliveries to the facility, food deliveries to the facility, service and utility calls to the facility, road or barrier maintenance, trash service, screening, access, drop off new dumpsters, or do they drop off new ones and take the old ones, or the empty dumpsters are there, or other trash receptacles? Cleaning crews, when do they arrive? What's the screening process? The equipment they're allowed to bring in? Where do they park? What uniforms do they wear? Response times of any first responder, and what locations do they respond to for gaining access? Most of the time, first responders have to go to one primary access point. They can't just show up anywhere at the facility. So other points of detection. Repeatedly seen persons observing facility during specific predictable facility activities, but absent from non-predictable activities. Same person observed at same observation area at different times. Okay? All indicators of surveillance. Another key point of observation for those performing surveillance detection is observing what a person looks like they should be doing versus what they are actually doing. Examples: a delivery truck should be making stops and items being taken from the truck and into the building, not parked for long periods of time with no observable people present. Vehicles who broke down. Drivers should appear frustrated and trying to resolve the issue, instead of staying in one location for an extended period of time. Security can call a tow truck for them, and traffic enforcement. Road workers, construction people, wear the required safety equipment, usually hard hats and work boots. They should be working on a task, not standing around watching the facility. That is, unless they're a supervisor or a supervisor is not present. Waitresses should be serving, not observing. Those conducting surveillance need to keep in character of the reason for being there in order to not stand out. Once they break character to perform surveillance activities, it gets easier to identify them as hostile surveillance personnel. The list again is endless, but persons conducting surveillance detection activities that know the area and know what is right and what isn't right, these things will stand out. So other considerations. As a fixed site, you will need to look at all locations that it will be possible for surveillance to be conducted against your facility. This can include other businesses around you that lease rooms that face your facility, restaurants, diners, coffee shops, retail stores, newsstands, street vendors, newspapers, and magazine stands. All can be surveillance platforms against you. Do not discount those working there are not surveillance personnel. Age and sex have nothing to do with who can do surveillance work. There are many instances of threat personnel getting jobs at locations to perform surveillance activities and gather other intelligence as needed through elicitation and solicitation. You need to remember that threat surveillance will be 24/7 in every type of weather. Threat needs to know everything about your facility, its security forces, processes, and equipment, because an attack can be planned for any time of day that benefits them. Your surveillance detection program must run 24/7 also. Many organizations only run their program during the day, which would be a huge mistake. There will be less activity going on, making surveillance stand out more after business hours at most locations. Do not fall into the trap of creating a surveillance detection program for business hours and weekdays only. Your program needs to run 24/7, 365 all year long. At night, after business hours, on weekends, and holidays, surveillance personnel will stand out more, making it easier for them to be detected. So, more considerations. The surveillance team watching the facility can also take more active parts in their operations to gain intelligence that will benefit them, any intelligence that will benefit them. They can call in fire alarms, medical issues, or other false alarms to learn the response time for first responders and the locations they report to for access and screening processes for access and the screening processes for them when they arrive. They can send flowers or food to view the screening process to get that inside. There can be an increase in power outages at the facility. This is done to test the backup power response time and recovery times for the utility power supply. This also gives them the chance to look at what security equipment is powered by the backup power systems. Persons digging through facility trash if it is outside the secure area. Theft of uniforms and ID cards for facility staff or contractors usually taken from vehicles on the way home from work but stopped at a store, bar, or other location. Increased attempts at elicitation of information about the facility when employees visit those local bars, restaurants, etc. Sometimes the hostile surveillance needs to gather specific information for planning purposes. To do this well, they create an activity they can observe actions of. They do this, once again, by calling in fire alarms, police swatting to observe the interactions with first responders and law enforcement, such as response time of the first responders, locations they have to report to gain access, are they screened before they're allowed in, are their vehicles screened before they're allowed in, etc. They can also call in bomb threats to get response times. They can send flowers or food they might even be those delivering it to identify the screening process for getting past security. They can shut off gas or power. They can also do things like striking vehicle barriers or gates to determine if it is noticed and what the response will be. So another thing we have to worry about. All right, internet use and satellite images. Most facilities and organizations do not information proof themselves from the internet. It's easy to go online and use Street View. You can observe and take screenshots of facilities, vehicle barriers, pedestrian barrier systems, entrances, courtyards, locations of cameras, guard shacks, etc. So the world is now available at your fingertips nowadays. And with the internet and the various mapping and satellite imaging resources available online for free. These services can give the threat surveillance high definition access to your facility in all areas from the rooftops to the courtyards, loading docks, etc. Street View can give them up close looks at your physical barriers, camera locations, and other security or sensitive areas. You have no way to know who is viewing this information, and most people do not realize how many different sites provide it. As an organization, you should make it a serious consideration to have your facilities blocked or blurred out to protect yourselves from this information being made available to any person or organization with hostile intent. This is just some of the sites that provide satellite imagery and photos off the internet for free. Now, something that should be discussed is the use of Google Earth and other uh, imaging software to obtain information on planned terrorist attacks. Remember, the surveillance is to be used to gain information otherwise unobtainable. This could include satellite photos of your residence or other primary locations and street views of your outer defenses, guard forces, cameras, entrance locations, etc. You can remove or blur your house from Google Earth and Google Maps just by asking. It has been done in the past. So, how to block your facility. Open Google Earth on your computer. Navigate to your facility by using the search or browsing feature. Click on the report a problem button, usually found in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. Select the option to request blurring or removal of your facility. Submit the request to Google for processing. Apple Maps. Submit an email to Apple at Maps Image Collection at apple.com and request that your particular address be blurred on Apple Maps. This removes one more tool available to threat actors for use in surveillance activities and obtaining information that can be used against you and your facility. So a lot of surveillance activities, especially nowadays, include technical surveillance. The use of technical surveillance means cameras, video cameras, drones, cell phones, but it also includes radio interceptors of the facility. Security officers and others who use radios as a primary means of communications at the facility. This allows the hostile surveillance to listen in on security and maintenance activities, looking for a hole that they can exploit. If you have wireless cameras on site, there are devices that can pick up this type of signal also. You need to have encrypted radios or come up with brevity codes when using your radios at your site. The surveillance will probably be listening to local law enforcement as well as much as they can. There is drone detection technology available that allows you to know when drones are detected in the area of your facility, their flight path, and where they are being operated from. Obtaining and placing into service this technology will greatly enhance your detection of surveillance drones and make you a harder target. And there is also technology available that can detect cameras pointed at your facility. Again, identify these cameras that are solely pointed at your facility will be a benefit to you in helping you fight against information gathering against your facility. So those performing surveillance detection functions. Those people who you designate to perform surveillance detection functions need to be trained in observation skills and reporting. They do not need to be in the outer ring to perform this function, which can be done through observation by long distance viewing or or cameras, closed circuit televisions focused on those areas identified as hostile observation points. While patrols can move through the outer ring driving around the facility, they should only do so when an activity is taking place that has been identified as information the threat element needs. An example would be driving through the red zone prior to the loading dock opening and seeing who is there, then driving through after it's open and seeing how the environment has changed or if it has changed at all. Those performing surveillance detection duties do not need to see the facility and those identified areas of concern. Their sole responsibility should be looking for surveillance activity in the hostile observation areas. Observation. So people performing static surveillance detection operations should develop observation skills, memory and recall, and the ability to describe what they see by painting that word picture in order to be effective in performing their duties. Technology can help with the use of cameras and CCTV to present an actual picture if these are available. So they should know how and be able to describe the general characteristics of a person and a vehicle. So these are just some general description characteristics of a person. So sex, male or female, Race, white, brown, black, Asian, Oriental, or Middle Eastern. Height, short, average, or tall. Clothing worn, business, athletic, casual. You also want to know the color, any logos or name tags that can be seen, stains, tears, holes, or short sleeves or long sleeves. So jewelry, eyeglasses, sunglasses, backpacks, purses, etc. Build, large, average, small, obese, stout, stocky, slim. Posture, straight, medium, stooped. Females, bust, flat, medium, large. Your weight. Age, young, adult, older than yourself. Hair, long, short, dark, light, red, ponytail, mohawk, etc. Complexion, white, pale, fair, dark, ruddy, sickly pale, tan. Black for blacks, it's light, dark, mixed. Everyone, skin is clear, pimpled, blotched, freckled, or pockmarked. Makeup, none, light, heavy, or the colors you're using. Any visible tattoos, any visible piercings, any visible scars. So your description needs to start at the top and move down a person's body. Okay. So head, size and shape. Face, round, oval, square, broad, long. Hair, color, blonde, brown, black, red, gray, streaked, natural or artificial. Density, thick, thin, medium, sparse. Hairline, low, medium, receding. Baldness, completely whole top of head, frontal, occipital, receding or combined. Type, straight, kinky, curvy, wavy. Texture, fine, medium, coarse. Appearance, neat. It's brushed, it's unkempt, oily, or dry. Style, long, medium, short. Parted on left, parted on right, not parted. Page boy, cornrow, wig, toupee, ponytail. So your forehead. Shape, high, medium, low. Width, wide, medium, narrow. Wrinkles or age lines, none. Light, deep, horizontal, or vertical. Your eyebrows, the color, same as the hair, or is it different? And shape, slanted, straight, arched, separated, connected, plucked, or penciled. Eyes, the shape, sunken, is going to be medium, bulging, spacing, wide, medium, narrow. Their color, if you can tell. Abnormalities, cross-eyed, watery, or they're red. Makeup, none. Light, dark, or regular color or type. Glasses, the style, the color of them, how they're attached. Mustache and beard, color, same or different from the hair. Straight, divided, handlebar, mandarin. Beard, rounded, double pointed, squared, Van Dyke, side whiskers. So your teeth, color, size, shape, condition, gold caps. Chin, small, large, pointed, squared, dimpled, cleft, double. Cheeks, full, bony, angular, flesh sunken in, or it's flat. Your makeup again, light, medium, or heavy. Ears, small, medium, or large. Do they have hearing aids? Are they wearing earrings? Do they have gauges, etc.? So the upper body, neck size, shape, uh, big Adam's apple, small Adam's apple. Shoulders, small, medium, large, narrow, broad, straight, stooped, slumped, or humped. Chest, broad, medium, or narrow. If females, breast, flat, medium, large, heavy. Waist, small, medium, or large. Abdomen, flat, medium, protruding. Deformities or disabilities, fingers, arms, missing limbs, limps, wears braces, etc. So lower body, hips, front view, broad, medium, or narrow. Profile, small, medium, or large. Legs, long, medium, or short. Shape, straight, bowed, or knock-kneed. Musculature, light, medium, heavy, chicken legs. So things on a person that are man-made. All right, tattoos, other things that change your appearance. Piercings through the cheeks, gauges in the ears, etc. Weird ways they cut their hair. Clothing, types of clothing they're wearing, the accessories they wear, jewelry, hair bands, earrings, studs, eyebrows, nose, tip, and lung, necklaces, ties, tie tack that they have if they wear a tie, armbands, bracelets, watches they could be wearing, finger rings, ankle bracelets, toe rings, hat and ear pods, a hat or ear pods or hearing aids, etc. Permanent characteristics can be temporary disguised or changed. Things like sex, being overweight or pregnant, race, accent, length of hair, facial hair, eye color, mole, scars, glasses. These can all be faked or covered up. So now we're going to talk about vehicles. So general characteristics of vehicles. Type, sedan, SUV, truck, van, Jeep. Color, single color, two-tone, multicolored, standard, or custom paint. Small, or size, small, medium, or large. Number of doors, two-door or four-door. Make, Chevrolet, Ford, Mazda, Kia, if you know. Model, Firebird, Camaro, Grand National, if you know. Year, if you know. So vehicle exterior, the cab top, business, military, or police markings and equipment, or nothing. Roof, is it convertible or hardtop? And does it have multiple antennas? Your windows, damaged, tinted, covered, or screened. The body of the car, its general appearance, and any damage, scratches, dents, broken antennas, missing bumpers, missing side mirrors, broken or cracked windows. The lights around the vehicle, on or off, damaged, mounted incorrectly. Bumpers, what's their appearance? Are they damaged? Do they have license plate holders? Do they have license plates? Can you tell the origin? Are there any decals or bumper stickers or other signs on the vehicle? Stickers of any type, bumper, magnetic signs on the side, commercial signs, parking passes, rental car stickers, school stickers, business stickers, sports team stickers, or military service. And what type of wheels do they have? The interior of the vehicle. Occupants, number and type and description if you can. Any photographs or other surveillance equipment viewable. The dashboard. Does it have paper or equipment sitting on the dashboard? Is anything broken? Is it cracked, etc.? Seats, color, and type. So, take a quick break if you need one. And I'm going to continue. So, now we're going to talk about checklists for a facility. Your facility needs to create a checklist to help determine its potential for surveillance detection and counter surveillance. This will be a reference for what needs to be redone annually to ensure all areas of the surveillance detection program are in place and working. Outside looking in questions. How close is your facility? These are questions that need to be asked when you create your checklist, okay? So how close is your facility to other businesses, residents, or other facilities that could be used as hostile observation points against you? List each structure or business type, what makes it a good surveillance platform. Can you work with the security of that building to help mitigate this threat? Is there a way to mitigate the threat from these structures by placing items to mask areas you want unobserved from observation from those structures? Is your current surveillance detection program, in your current surveillance detection program, how long can hostile surveillance operate without being detected? This is an opinion. What other areas of possible hostile observation points are there? The list and the processes needs to be written. It is important so the security program is working off facts instead of tribal knowledge. And this is in case people leave the organization and take that tribal knowledge with them. If it's not written down, nobody's going to know what was being done or how to recreate it. Also remember to include weather and daytime versus nighttime activities and issues. So, more on the checklist. Surveillance detection potential for your facility and security team. Do you have observation points, including camera coverage that allows you to monitor activities occurring outside your area of control, including the identified hostile surveillance points? Does your facility have blind spots in its area of observation? Could these blind spots be covered by CCTV, or other type of camera or guard patrols or guard stations? Are your observation points, cameras, and other technical aids observable to persons outside the facility? Do you have personnel trained in surveillance detection or have the ability to get them trained? Do you have a memorandum of agreement that allows you to place cameras or CCTVs for observing Identify hostile observation points outside of your area of control. Do you have facial recognition technology available to help identify and track people who have been identified as potential adversary surveillance or other threats? Do you have license plate reader technology available to help identify vehicles that linger or in hostile observation areas for extended periods of time during hours of predictable security activities? Do not forget that day versus night time, weather issues, and the season, snow, rain can affect your efforts in surveillance detection. These issues need to be included in your plan. You also need to have backup and contingency plans in place for issues with any technology aid you're using or anything that impacts your observation capabilities. So these are some considerations for different operating environments. Specifically rural areas and industrial parks. These areas are unique in that they have limited traffic that is not associated with the work being done in the area. Hostile surveillance will still need to gather information if these facilities are potential targets. There will still be hostile observation areas for performing surveillance functions against the facility. Once you have identified these areas, you need to look at how the threat can perform surveillance without detection. This can be done by construction or road maintenance vehicles in the area, the use of drones, the use of trail cameras. New trail cameras can be linked to cell networks and send photographs and videos back to designated accounts. They can be hard to detect for people not looking for them. Your best bet about finding these is observing them being placed. That's the best time to detect them is when they're being put in. Hide positions if there are fields of vegetation or woods nearby. That's basically someplace people can hide that allows them to observe your facility without being observed themselves. So, possible observation points. Areas that are located in the third ring of security, what's considered the information ring, and can provide views of those areas identified as critical information points. And these are facility vulnerabilities and predictable activity, and you need to protect them from observational intelligence gathering. So, parking lots, parking garages, campgrounds, overpasses, highways, elevated buildings, hotels, apartment buildings, hospitals, parks, walkways, jogging and biking trails, train platforms, bus stops, rideshare pickup locations, taxi stands, restaurants, diners, outdoor cafes, coffee shops, retail stores with seats or tables where people can sit for extended periods, such as bookstores, amusement park, air trolleys, elevated train and tram tracks and platforms, boats, homeless encampments, new building construction, panhandling at intersections and streets. The list is basically endless. You need to make up one for your operating environment and the specific area your facility sits in. So, creating a surveillance detection plan or a counter surveillance plan. You need to determine what intelligence or information is needed for the threat to successfully bypass your security and for an attack to succeed. You need to do this by looking outside in at your security program and the outside physical security and the processes of your security element. Define each site-specific vulnerability, then determine for each what information is general knowledge, what information is needed to neutralize or bypass that vulnerability, what specific information is considered controlled or mission critical to your facility, how can the threat obtain this information? Can they get it off the internet, off your facility website, Google Earth, newspaper articles about the facility, or through physical surveillance or on-site monitoring or in the information ring around your facility? So these specific vulnerabilities for your site will include your barrier systems, which include your fences, gates, both pedestrian and vehicle, any vehicle bomb mitigation items you have, such as large landscaping rocks, planters, or bollards that control vehicle movement, movable vehicle barriers, bollards, wedge barriers, drop arm gates, rolling gates, and do not forget your predictable activities such as loading dock operations, mail delivery, UPS, and other package pickup and drop-off services. Opening and closing your doors is also a predictable activity, as is your guard mount when guards come on duty and when they go off duty. You need to remember that surveillance is considered a long-term operation, so you need to look at your predictable activities that way. Daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly. Why? Because you could do facility fire drills quarterly when everyone leaves the building. If you always go to the exact same locations for accountability, those areas could be targeted by IEDs. Also, barrier system inspections, repairs, how often are they looked at? How long does it take to get something fixed? What were the contingency measures you used during the time that vehicle was not operational? Did you leave the barrier down until it was fixed and just park the car in front of the gate? Did you bring in a portable barrier? Etc. What information about your facility is general knowledge and should it be? Many organizations have web pages and put out information to allow visitors and employees to get information before arriving, such as what to expect at screening points, how to get a visitor pass, where you need to park, what entrances you need to use for events or non-events, what items can be brought in, what items are prohibited, etc. Can any of that information the facility puts out to the public be used to neutralize or bypass security elements or your security process chain? So, you need to do a vulnerability analysis of the facility. This process should be a written document so it can be performed consistently on a biannual basis for your facility. This analysis is going to be used to determine the vulnerabilities of your facility to hostile surveillance and the predictable activity that is conducted at your facility and in the surrounding areas. Time and place predictable means you are a soft target. To perform this analysis, you're going to need to step outside your role of security and perform it from the perspective of a potential threat or attacker. You must be outside looking in and do not rely on your knowledge of the security organization, but perform it as someone who has no knowledge other than what they can see and what can be obtained from outside, which sometimes this can be a lot. You need to do this in order to anticipate and predict the actions of the adversary and hostile actors. By doing this, it can also help you see the facility and on-ground situation as the attackers will, and this will help you develop a plan to mitigate any potential actions thwarting future plans of the threat. So, area analysis. What information does the threat need to know in order to perform a successful attack? Facility analysis. What specific vulnerabilities does your facility have from the perspective of the threat? List each one separately. This also includes predictable activities, not only for your facility, as we discussed, but for facilities that adjoin yours, or the area surrounding the facility if there are things like annual parades. Make a list and do not forget daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly predictable items. Here is some things, an example of areas to address when conducting your facility vulnerability analysis. General facility building and buildings design, proximity to areas outside your control, streets, neighborhoods, etc. Entrances, pedestrian, vehicle, package, food deliveries, etc. Barrier systems, landscaping, fencing, king tut blocks, planters, vegetation. Access for visitors, access for services, utilities, elevator, vending, first responders. Specific areas that are denied access except to employees. Specific areas that have limited access to specific employees and service personnel. Access for employees. A building can have multiple tenants, such as businesses with different areas, and each business will have different access requirements to specific areas. Sorry. Identification and access verification for non-working people access, such as one-day contractors or repairmen, visitors, and deliveries. So the screening requirements for persons, bags, vehicles, for employees, for visitors, for service and first responder personnel. Remember, area analysis, this will be your hostile surveillance requirements. And facility analysis, site-specific vulnerabilities determines location of attack, and this will determine the type of attack. So determine hostile surveillance positions. Now that you have completed your analysis for each critical information point, you need to determine where hostile surveillance needs to be in order to obtain that information. Threat surveillance requirements. View of the specific target facility's identified vulnerabilities. They're going to need cover and concealment, and they're going to need routes into and out of the area. So detection zones. You must have the ability to detect surveillance in the areas you have determined are hostile surveillance areas. Your detection coverage must include visual coverage of the identified hostile surveillance points and general areas around it. Considerations for these surveillance areas. Does the activity change with seasons or weather? Does the activity change nighttime to daytime? Does the activity change during non-business hours? Does the activity change during the weekends versus weekdays? Does the activity change during special events? So, change with the seasons or weather. Some areas have specific plans for bad weather, such as vehicles have to be moved off streets for snowplows to come through, or areas may flood with seasonal rain. If vehicles are not moved as required during emergency snow ordinance events or are moved and put back as soon as the plow goes by, this is a potential indicator. So, does pedestrian traffic, vehicle traffic, patron traffic, patterns of activities change at night? Does a bar district get more activity? Does everything in the area close down after a certain time? People who do not follow these specific area patterns are potential surveillance. So for non-business hours, when businesses are closed because of work hours or weekends, but especially for holidays, the change in activity should be the same for everyone. For those that are not following these area patterns, they could be surveillance operators. Weekends versus weekdays. Some areas, the weekend activities are completely different than the weekday activities. Parks get busier, more traffic and movement on bike and jogging trails. Some businesses shut down, some street vendors set up for the weekend traffic and opportunities. This has to be observed. So for special events, holidays, parades, for sporting events, tailgating around sports venues, street shows and vendors around entertainment venues, 4th of July celebration, what changes and what stays the same in the surveillance phones, who ignores the new activities, and who stays focused on your facility. You need to remember, just like the surveillance against your facility, your surveillance detection program needs to run and look at the activities daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly. Also consider using cameras or closed-circuit television to help watch these areas. This gives you a video record of people and events taking place. If you use facial recognition software, it can help you track people also, especially for threats. For example, you see the same person at multiple surveillance points you have identified at different times. And this is also the same with license plate readers. Technology can be a help in your surveillance processes. Your knowledge of these areas will help you in conducting the surveillance detection program. All right. Reporting suspected surveillance activities. When you detect surveillance activity or other suspicious activities, you need to report it to your organization and local law enforcement. You need to submit a report that covers at a minimum the following information: who is doing what, when are they doing it, where they did it at, and why do you think they are doing it? Who, what, when, where, why. Okay? The U.S. government, DHS, has a nationwide suspicious activity reporting initiative, and they even have formats and a place you can report this to ensure it gets reported to someone if your facility doesn't have a process in place to work with local and federal authorities. They also have posters and other things for their See Something, Say Something program, which gives you things to look for in reporting suspicious or terrorism-related activities. All these are important to your surveillance detection program, and they can all enhance it and make you safer. And remember, surveillance detection can save lives and protect property.